Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be recapping my round 5 game that I played in the Lina Grumette Memorial. Now going to this round, I was at 3 out of 4, and in this 5th round I'm playing a 2004 rated player. So let's get on with the game. Well, actually, before we get on with the game, I have to tell you that I played a Blitz tournament and it lasted until like 2 a.m. So I only got like 6 or 7 hours of sleep, which is like not the recommended amount. So I was actually kind of tired going into this round, so let's get on with the game. So he played e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6. Now, this is the Golka piano if I just go d3, which is what I did. But there are two orders. You could go bishop c5 and just force a Golka piano, and I just go d3, then go knight f6. But with this move order, I can actually play this move knight to g5, which is the fried liver attack. In which case, after d5, you take, and the only move is knight a5, bishop b5, check, c6, takes, take, oh, that would be really nice for me, takes, and bishop to d3, and then the best move is knight d5, knight f3, bishop d6, and it's a really long set of moves, really long line, and I don't really feel like going to this because I thought he had something in this, so I just decided to play calm and go d3. And now he goes bishop c5. I castle my king, he goes d6, c3, a5. Now, and I go a4. And now, I try to gain space by going a4, and so the main idea for white in this position is to try to get d4 and try to open up the position in the center, while black may try to counter me in the center by going bishop e6, and maybe if we trade off these bishops, he'll have this open f file in the future, which then he could use to attack. And now he drops back his bishop to a7. I go knight bd2, he castles, and now I go h3. Now h3 is kind of like a wasted move in this position. I do not really need to go h3. I can actually just play rook e1, which is the main move, try and go knight f1 and knight g3, and then go d4 in the future. But the point after rook e1, he can actually throw in this move knight to g4, and now I defend this pawn via rook e2. And then he goes king h8. And I have a notoriously bad result. I have notoriously bad results in this position with the white side, and I'm not going to explain to you why I do, but I just didn't feel like going to it because it felt a little bit too aggressive for my liking. Like, I can go h3, and then maybe he'll play like a weird move like knight h6 trying to prepare f5. Or actually, in this position, you can go f5 itself. f5 right now, and you can't take, because after fg4, maybe move like knight e1, he can actually go g3, and you have this like really strong bishop here, or he can actually go queen h4. I actually don't know what the correct move is here. Maybe it's actually just queen h4, but this is a really strong position for black. And after f5, you may have to go like d4. It's really complicated, and I didn't want to get super complicated like opening battle literally in the beginning. So after h3, he goes h6, and I go rook e1, and now he goes bishop e6, like what I was talking about. If I trade the bishops, which is what I do in this game, he actually has this open f-file, and he can target me via like knight h5, maybe queen e8, queen g6, or queen a8, queen h5, you'll see in the future. And if I go back, let's say bishop b3, and go back to c2, he can actually challenge me in the center by going d5, or maybe he can try to get his knight to f4 via h5 to f4, and maybe try and get f5 and attack me that way. But I trade off the bishops, fe6, and I go knight to f1, and he goes knight h5, and this stops me from putting my knight to g3. So if I go knight to g3 now, he can actually go knight takes g3, and I cannot take back because there is a pin on the king. So after knight h5, I see how strong his bishop is, and I just challenge it with bishop to e3. And by going bishop e3, I am actually threatening to trade off the bishops, and he has a better bishop than I do, so this is a good trade for me. And by trading off his bishop on e3, he has less sight on the d4 square, so it'll be easier to push d4 in the future. So after bishop to e3, he goes queen e8. He ignores what's happening with the tension on the bishops and tries to get his queen to g6 and his knight to f4. I trade off the bishops, and now I go d4, and now I try to open up the center. I'm hoping he trades, and maybe I can get rook c1 in the future, which is actually what happened. And now he goes queen f7, and I go rook c1, and he gets his knight to f4, which is what he wants in this position. With the knight on f4, the knight is a really powerful piece because he's always threatening stuff with knight takes g2 or knight takes h3. Like right now, he's threatening knight takes h3 with winning the piece. Like if I just go like b3, knight takes h3 comes. And actually, I was calculating if I can ignore it and just go knight to g3. And the point is, after knight g3, he can go knight h3, g takes h3, queen takes f3, queen f3, rook f3, and I can play this move d5. And the point is, if he trades off the pawns and goes knight to e5, I can go rook takes c7, and I have this really powerful rook on c7. Combined with the fact that I can go rook c1, I have a nice position, I thought. But after knight d5, I rejected this because after e takes d5, e takes d5, he can actually put his knight on b4. And after rook takes c7, knight takes c5, rook d7. I calculated this move rook f6 originally, but I was going to go rook e8 check, king h7, knight to e4, and I was going to win this pawn. And I thought this would be a really nice position for me. But I rejected this move because after rook to d7, I saw that he can actually just ignore both these pawns and just go rook a8 and trying to get his rook to f8. And after rook takes d7, rook takes d6, knight e7, or no, that not knight e7, maybe something like knight b4 or knight f6. I thought he would eventually consolidate the position and just hold a draw. And I thought it was too early to decide how quickly I should draw this game. I thought maybe I should try to get something at least in the position, try for a little bit longer. So I just go rook c3, protecting against this knight h3 threat and trying to keep pieces on the board. And so after rook c3, he goes rook a6. He can actually also go rook a8, trying to get his rook to the center, or also get a second rook to the f file. Maybe he moves his queen out, goes rook a8, rook a7, and rook f8. That would be really powerful. But he goes rook a6 and tries to challenge me on the queen side. Now this is actually good if we get into like a future endgame, because the problems I'll have in this position is I'll have some weaknesses on the queen side, and maybe a few weaknesses on the king side. And that's how you win endgames, by creating weaknesses on both sides of the board, because that will make my pieces very scattered and not really very unified. So I go rook to b3, and I'm kind of forcing him to go knight to b4. He should not go b6, because that will create his knight c6 will be really soft and really weak, and the c7 pawn will be like really weak as well. And so by going rook b3, also I maybe could have gone rook b6 here, just trading off the rooks and maybe creating a c file here and also getting his knight to b4. But I thought these doubled pawn, he shouldn't allow these double pawns, and he can just go knight b4 right now. But after knight b4, now I was going to go knight to g3 and defend my king properly. And now by forcing his knight to b4, I can maybe go rook c3 in the future again and force the knight back. But actually he goes rook to c6 here. And I can see he's trying to get knight c2, and he's trying to break through on the queen side. So I challenge him with going rook c3, and here he goes queen d7. And after queen d7, I go rook e3. I'm double protecting this rook, and I thought maybe I could trade the rook and go rook c3 and try and take control of the c file. And here he goes his interesting move knight to a2, which actually I missed completely. I only realized he can go knight a2 after I went rook e3. And the point after knight a2, I'm forced to trade. I'm forced to take the rook on c6. If I play a move like rook a3 trying to attack the knight, this actually loses due to the deadly move rook c1, which actually pins the queen to the king, and I lose my queen. So I trade off rooks, and here he goes b takes c6, which is a slight inaccuracy according to the computer. And I thought the same as well. The reason why is after queen takes c6, the position is really solid, and there's nothing much really for both of us to do. I might dance my rook around for a little bit, maybe try to maneuver my knight. But with b takes c6, I now have something to play for, which is this a5 pawn. And so I thought, why not just attack it? Queen d2, knight b4. And now, let me explain why this is like not that good. It's because now he can't defend the a5 pawn via b6. And by going b takes c6, although he creates an open file, this pawn is a little bit weak, and he may have to spend some time defending it. So I go queen d2, he goes knight b4, the best move, and now I go e5, and I sort of rushed this move. I should have probably taken more time, and this is actually a slightly inaccurate move. I didn't realize it after he played this move queen f7. The best move according to the computer is actually knight to e2, and the reason why it's the best move is because after knight takes e2, queen takes e2, The most powerful piece on the board at that moment was basically the knight on f4 because it was threatening a lot of things in knight h3, knight g2, and the queen on d7 wasn't really doing anything there. And the rook on f8 was only supporting the knight and didn't really create a lot of threats as well. And only the knight was like creating some of the threats. So by getting rid of the knight on f4, I get rid of his most powerful piece on the board, and now without the knight on f4, there's basically zero attack for him, and now I can just send all my pieces to the queen side and maybe try and win this a5 pawn in the future. But I go e5 here, and the point is if he trades, I go knight e5, and if he tries to checkmate me, I go rook to e4. And I thought, okay, this position would be really nice for me. He has doubled pawns, he has an isolated pawn, I have a really strong knight, I have a really good rook, his knight's under attack. I thought, okay, I should be at least like +1 or +2, I would be better here. And the computer says +0.5. And the point is, after e5, if he goes d5, now I see he has this weakened square c5, so now I was going to go try and get my rook to c5 and to try to attack this pawn. But after e5, he doesn't have to do any of that. He can just go queen f7. And after he played this move, I'm like, okay, now I don't have anything here. I don't really know what to do. I don't have any plans. If I take, maybe I could try to attack this pawn, but it's really hard. He has this really strong knight on f4 once again, serving a nice defensive role for the e6 pawn. And now I just go queen h2. I basically waste a move, and I'm like, okay, let's protect both h3 and g2 and see what we can do next. And now he goes queen g6, trying to maybe get h5, h4, and I try to shoo the knight away with the rook e4, and now he goes queen f7. And here I'm trying to think for a really long time, thinking, what should I do here in this position? I'm like, maybe I could go knight e2, but I'm like, okay, maybe he can get his knight here, and I didn't really like that. And I'm like thinking, also actually after knight e2, he has move knight takes g2. It's really hard to find a concrete plan here, so I'm like, okay, let's go rook e3. Then he goes queen g6, then I go rook e4. And actually, I realized in calculation that I actually missed this move he had, which is move knight bd5. And I calculated this move earlier, and I saw, okay, well, I mean, he just loses a pawn. But actually, queen takes a5 is a blunder, as you can see by the eval bar, because he has this really strong move, knight takes g2. And the point is, if I take the knight, he goes queen f7. And I have no good way of protecting this knight. I can't go rook e3 because of knight e3. I can't go queen c3 because of knight c3. And if I just move the knight away, he has queen takes f2, he wins the knight, and with the rook f2 coming, I'm just losing. But actually, knight bd5 is not the best move because of this move, knight to e1. Again, not knight e2 because I lose because of queen takes g2. But actually, after knight e1, I can now go knight to d3. And by maybe getting rid of this knight, I can try to target this. Or by knight e1 defending g2, I could just straight up take the pawn. So maybe like a line is after queen e8, I can queen a5, queen a8. I trade off the queens. The only move to defend the pawn is b3. After rook b8, I then trade off the knight. After rook b3, then I take on e6. I am up a pawn, but he wins this pawn. I may win both these pawns, he wins both these pawns, and I'm up. I have 3 pawns against these two, and I can maybe try to win that position. But he didn't see this, and so he just goes queen f7, and after rook e3, I'm like, okay, it's a draw. We agreed to a draw because of 3-fold repetition. And yeah, so this position, this game was kind of a boring game. I didn't really get a lot in this position. Like, he was trying to push a little bit, trying to get his rook to a6 and maybe his knight to a2. But after this, maybe I was trying to push, and I sort of squandered anything I had with this move e5, maybe rushing the position, rushing with the amount of time I had left. I don't really know how much time I had left, but I probably had a lot of time to think. And after, like, because queen f7, there's just, like, a really boring position. There's nothing to play for. So, yeah, so my next video will be my round 6 recap. Spoiler alert, that's going to be my longest game of the event. And yeah, that's all for today, and I hope you all enjoyed the video. Goodbye, everyone.